Okay, so this week's weekly topic is periodization. This is one of my favorite topics of all time. I'm not going to go too in depth. I just want to give a brief overview of what it is, so that way, for those of you who don't know what it is, understand it a little bit better and how important it is if you want to progress in your health and in your physical fitness. And this is really one of the main reasons why I started Milo Strength and Conditioning, started my company, was because I felt like this was being overlooked in the health and the fitness industry. I felt like a lot of people don't focus on this anymore, and it's creating a lot of confusion on what's the best way to progress, what are the best programs out there. Whereas if we were just to focus and understand periodization a little bit better, it would clarify a lot of those questions and doubts that people have. So I'm going to read a few definitions. I'm going to kind of simplify what they're saying because they're a little wordy, but I think they're really important in order to understand what this means. So what is periodization? Periodized training plans that systematically shift training foci over a period of many weeks or months to help reduce the potential for overtraining while optimizing performance capacities. So periodization means we're periodizing or compartmentalizing our training into different periods or blocks. And so a lot of times when we're trying to, for example, just get stronger, people think, okay, I'm going to get on a strength program and run that program on repeat over and over and over again for months and months and months. And that's not how you progress. You have to systematically shift your training focus if you want to have continual progress over a long period of time. So why is this important? It's important because to stimulate the physiological adaptations necessary to enhance performance. So when our body is feeling a stimulus from a certain training program, our body's going to adapt, and that's what allows us to progress, get stronger, to get bigger, to get faster, whatever the goal that you're training for is because of that stimulus. It's new to your body, so your body's having to adapt to it. But when we don't shift the training focus over those periods, our body learns to adapt to that stimulus, and then we plateau. And that's where we start to not make any progress, or even we regress. And so that's why it's so essential for us to be able to modulate and periodize different training focuses throughout our year or our training cycle, depending on what you're training for, so that we continue to adapt to the stimulus that we're putting on it. So we do this by modulating training stressors to enhance adaptive responses while reducing the potential for performance plateaus or overtraining. So kind of like what I just explained. So how is this applied? So again, I'm going to read this and then kind of break it down. Training programs need to be logically designed so that they are structured in a systematic and pre-planned manner, allowing variation of training volume, intensity, frequency, density, foci, mode, and exercise selection in accordance with the athlete's needs and its requirements. And so those are the variables that you want to play with in different periods of your periodization macro cycle. And so these variables, oftentimes people find one set of variables that they like as far as their volume, how heavy they're going, the frequency of their training split, their focus, their exercise selection. They say, hey, I like all of these things. Okay, now I have my golden program and I'm just going to keep doing that on repeat. And that's goes back to what I said before. Your body will adapt to that. So there is no golden or perfect program that you can just find that's perfect for you and then just repeat it for life. That's not going to work because your body's going to adapt to that stimulus that you're putting on it, and then you're going to plateau and then regress. And so through periodization, we are able to manipulate and change these variables systematically throughout different training blocks so that our body is continuing to have to adapt, so it'll continue to progress towards the goals that we're trying to achieve. So a few key parts or aspects you have to understand about periodization. You'll hear people talk about these things. And so at the top, think about them in almost time periods is the best way to understand it. So you have kind of a multi-year plan, and that's where if you're in the Olympics or if you are at a collegiate training facility, they're going to have you on a multi-year 2 to 4 year plan. An annual training plan, just like I said, is 1 year. And then you kind of have these different vocabulary that you'll hear that people talk about. So you have a macro cycle, and that's kind of referring to many months or even a year of training. Then you have mesocycles. So mesocycles could be anywhere from a month to 6 months, kind of depending on how your training program is set up. Then you have microcycles, which are usually 1 to 2 weeks at a time. And then you have your training day and then training sessions, which are pretty self-explanatory. And so through using different mesocycles are basically training blocks that you can separate into your big picture macro cycle. And so if you are in a collegiate training facility and their goal is to help you become faster, they're trying to increase speed, then in the macro cycle, that's the overall goal. But you can't just train high intensity and low volume the entire time. You're going to have to kind of modulate that based on your training season, where you're at in your training progress, and it's going to all kind of depend. But these are basically building blocks that you can structure in your periodized macro cycle to allow you to have that continual progress and adaptation to the new stimulus that you're putting on it in each mesocycle. And so this is kind of an overview, and again, kind of to help you organize what periodization looks like. You have kind of your annual training plan, the macro cycle is kind of the big picture, and then you have different periods, kind of a preparatory period. So think about like women's volleyball in college, right? You're going to have a preparatory period over the off season and the preseason is kind of getting them ready for their season. Then you might have a competition period. You might have like a transition period where you're going in between competition and off season. That's going to help ramp things up. It totally depends on what sport you're in. If you're not in a sport and you're just training for just health or just trying to get stronger, trying to get bigger, this is still crucial because you need to have these different periods to have that different training stimulus. And so these all break down into different training blocks and mesocycles that could be hypertrophy, basic strength, whatever your training goal might be. And so really the goal of this is over time, you have to have periods of stressing your body and then having periods of letting your body recover a little bit. So that way you can keep moving forward up on that trend of progress. And so the reason why to me this is so important is because in any Olympic training facility, in any professional sports training facility, in any collegiate training facility, all of those strength and conditioning coaches follow periodization. So the most optimized population that we know in our world, they're all following periodization. They're all following this systematic shifting of training foci to have this continual progress to optimize the performance and these outcomes that these athletes are trying to get. But yet, when we come back to kind of the health and fitness world for regular people, very few people follow a 12-month periodized training cycle. We've kind of morphed or shifted into these 12-week, get huge programs or 10-week weight loss programs, and then you're done. And so what happens is people end up getting excited to get on these programs. They'll do the program, and after their program, they're kind of lost. They don't know what to do next. So they think, well, I guess let's just run it back. We'll just repeat it. And that's when you start to get a lot of those plateaus and even regression of your progress, because there's not really a steady focused goal of where you want to get to in 12 months. And so again, this is why I started this company, was to provide these periodized training cycles to the everyday person. So that way, if you're training for a specific outcome, you're not just going to get some 10-week standalone program and then be done and go back to your old self, but everything has been planned out for 12 months plus when you hop on any of the Milo strength and conditioning programs that are systematically changing those training foci for you in the different mesocycle and training blocks that you're going to participate in. So anyways, that's kind of the basics of periodization. Hopefully this just opened your mind a little bit to what this means and piques your interest a little bit to understanding and learning more about it, because it's so crucial for anyone that wants to really optimize their performance and get the best version of themselves when it comes to their health.